Hey guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. If this is your first time here, hope you like it and subscribe to it. So I wanted to create these videos as a supplement to this upcoming course that I'm working on detailing my ECR method. And what that stands for is Establish, Compare, Refine. I've been soliciting questions from the people who have downloaded my 6-part PDF from my website and subscribed to my newsletter as a result. I asked them to send me questions. I could hopefully answer them here in my YouTube channel. So let's get into some of them, okay? Okay, so first question is, I would love it if you taught me how you identify true color in a landscape. The way to do it for me is to try and get as close as possible to what I think might be the true color of a landscape and adjust it by comparing the two adjacent colors to each other. So, for example, let's say we're painting the sky and a distant mountain. I'm actually kind of looking out the window at one now. Let's first mix some colors that I think will approximate what I'm after. And you got to remember that color doesn't exist on its own. It exists as a relationship to the colors around it. So unless you're in a pure black or pure white visual situation, there's always going to be a difference, no matter how subtle, between one area of what you're looking at and another. The amount of that difference is the contrast. And depending on what we're painting, we want to really observe that contrast. And when people think of contrast, they normally think of value contrast. That's probably the most important area of contrast to consider. But, there's also color contrast, color temperature contrast, and any other sort of contrast that you may observe in the field. So if we're looking outside at the sky and you go further down toward the horizon and you start to see distant hills, so you start to compare, the color of the sky is almost always going to be lighter than the color of the distant hill, depending on what situation you're in weather-wise. But for the most part, here in California, you get those either green or brown hills. Further back they go, they start to become more blue because they're influenced by the moisture in the air, which creates the atmosphere between you and the subject. So that mountain is going to be darker and more skewed toward, it depends. This is where you really got to observe it and see for yourself. So when I look at the sky, it's a light blue, but it's also a little bit yellowish because of the influence of the sun and any other particles in the air that may actually make it a warmer temperature than the hill underneath, which is going to be blue and sometimes even a little bit purple. There's all sorts of other colors in there, so it's blue and green. So the first thing you're going to want to do is mix the first color of the sky that you believe it is. So it's mostly a blue and white. In my palette, it's typically a mixture of titanium white, manganese blue hue, and a little bit of ultramarine blue. And that typically gets me to some version of the sky. And then from there, I observe if it's a warmer sky or a little bit more of my orange, red, or alizarin crimson, depending on what I observe. So from there, I could go to my hill and try and mix a base color for that. And that's going to be, I would say, ultramarine blue, maybe a little bit of viridian, less titanium white than my sky, of course, and something to modulate the color temperature that I see. So that might be a yellow ochre, might even be a green gold that's on my palette, but any other sort of things in there. I can even add some burnt sienna from my palette to modulate the color there. So what I normally do there is start to compare the two shapes that I have laid down next to each other and see, okay, which one is more accurate to what I'm seeing of the two shapes. If it's the sky, then that means I will start to look at the hill and see what colors I can get it closer to each other. While this whole time I'm just looking back and forth at the subject that I'm painting and what I have on my canvas. And that just keeps going back and forth until I get a color that's approximate to what I want. That's the hard part of painting. You have to do this over and over again as you keep going through your painting, and you start with the big shapes and you keep drilling further and further down till you get to the smallest pieces. But the whole time you're just doing this comparison dance. In a nutshell, that's what I do to identify true color in a landscape. And I definitely get into this more in my ECR method in my upcoming course. So I'll keep answering questions about it, but it's definitely something I'll continue to modify and refine in my courses. And I hope that you guys are interested in that eventually. But for now, keep subscribing to my YouTube and you'll see more questions answered, and maybe you'll get more out of these free tips. So yeah, thanks for watching. If you have questions about my method or just plein air painting in general, or anything that you want to learn from me, hit me up at Sergio Lopez Landscapes on Instagram. Send me a DM there, or you can email me at sergiolopez@themainloop.com. You could also subscribe to my email list and email me from there at themainloop.com or sergiolopezfineart.com.